I'd like to introduce today's panelist. Joining us today from Luminis Health is Tanya Roberts, and from Modea, Mo Gaily. And our moderator today is Noe Newmark, Director of Growth for Modea. I'll now turn it over to Noe to begin this afternoon's discussion.
Thank you, Farah. Hi, everyone, and thank you for being here today for this webinar. Our webinar today centers on a major challenge that we know many healthcare marketing and IT leaders are facing, and that is cleaning up foundational technologies. Across the industry, we are seeing a big push toward platform rationalization and cleaning up legacy systems, especially with the need for clean digital data, which has become even more important as systems are building out AI functionality. Organizations we are seeing are really looking to rationalize or consolidate fragmented systems that haven't historically talked to each other. But what makes today's session unique is that we aren't just talking about abstract theories or a high-level technology roadmap. We are actually here to give you an inside look at work that happened at Luminis Health. And we are here today to share the realities, challenges, and results of that work with the people who actually did the work. To guide us through our case study today, I am happy to introduce our two presenters. So as Farah mentioned, my name is Noe Newmark. I'm the Director of Growth at Modea. And while I have the pleasure of kicking off today's webinar and helping moderate Q&A later, the real value you're going to get today is in hearing from the cross-functional team members who did the heavy lifting for this project. With us from the engineering side, we have Mo Gaily, a senior software engineer at Modea. Mo spearheaded the technical development and component integration that made this centralization project possible. And then representing the health system side from Luminis Health, we are thrilled to have our incredible partner, Tanya Roberts, user experience and digital strategist. Tanya was the strategic anchor, helping ensure that both patient and internal employee needs were met without compromising on user experience. So together, Mo and Tanya will walk us through the entire journey that Modea and Luminis Health have taken together. Before we get into the more technical details, let me just give a quick high-level introduction to who we are at Modea. We are a digital experience consultancy, and we have been around for 20 years. We are intentionally, exclusively healthcare focused, and over the last 2 decades, we've partnered with an array of healthcare organizations, predominantly health systems across the country to help them define strategies, design and build intuitive and innovative digital experiences. Our experience spans multi-state health systems, smaller regional systems, premier children's hospitals, and prominent academic medical centers. And whether a client organization is trying to build a seamless scheduling tool or a mobile app or just come up with a plan to consolidate technologies or improve their digital experience, our job is to help our clients overcome technical debt, create a plan, build a scalable foundation, and ultimately create really excellent digital experiences. The project we're sharing today with Luminis Health is an example of that type of work, showing how Modea partners with health systems to create efficient, shared digital ecosystems that improve the experience for the user or the customer, but also for the internal digital teams. Let's take a look at our agenda so you know what to expect over the next 45 minutes or so. We will be looking honestly at the problem that Luminis Health was facing, which we call the digital divide. So the strain of separating the sleek, patient-facing consumer web from the often outdated internal intranet. Mo and Tanya will share about overcoming that divide and the benefits of doing so, focusing on the efficiencies gained and enabling your technology spend to do more with less. Moving forward, we'll lay out some of the conditions for success for governance, collaboration, and different design approaches that made this work successful. And then finally, we'll leave time at the end for live Q&A and have time for some closing thoughts and discussion to send you on your way. So with that roadmap in place for today, I am going to step back and hand it over to Tanya and Mo to take us through this story.
Thanks, Noe. I've been at Luminis Health for about 5 years, primarily starting off as the intranet lead and now handling both consumer and intranet. We're a small regional health system that serves about 1.8 million people within a few specific communities in Maryland. Our consumer website that we worked with Modea on is luminishealth.org, and that's been live for close to 4 years now, which has gone by very quickly. We see about 3 million users and 12 million views per year on that site. Our uh, com sister component to that is together.luminishealth.org, which is our intranet, which is a little bit younger, launched about 18 months after the initial consumer website. That gives you kind of the time frame we're looking at right now. We spent about 18 months keeping two platforms alive. Let me show you where our web properties were at that time and why we struggled to manage those two platforms. Here we have the ghost of intranet past. At this point, function had outpaced design by a long shot. By now, it was barely functioning at that point as well. At the time, the intranet product was my primary responsibility, as I said, but I was forced to wrangle these ghosts of technical debt every day. Meanwhile, I was migrating content on luminishealth.org, and it was clean and simple and was satisfactory at the end once you publish the product. Next slide. And here we have our consumer website at luminishealth.org, which continues to evolve through today, thanks to agile, iterative processes and the support of data analysis and stakeholder feedback. Modea helped guide us through the patient journeys and a new brand guideline to drive a completely new vision that brought together multiple fragmented websites. Our consumer website prioritizes user experience, and we release new and updated features efficiently and often, thanks to style libraries and the methods that we've used for development to accompany all this collaboration. The project continues to be supported and refined based on our organizational priorities and just industry technology transformation that makes improvement possible. Meanwhile, the intranet, as I said, it was barely functioning. At this point, it had lagged so severely behind, and despite our best efforts to get this old platform to align with new branding and additional locations for care, the intranet had become cluttered and outdated and a challenge to maintain as time passed, maintaining these two different platforms. It was deteriorating at a rapid rate. We couldn't move forward while dragging along this aging dated system every day, but there were some other reasons realignment became important. We were seeing the strain of separation. The cost of maintaining both platforms was astronomical. The rapid obsolescence of the internet platform was making everything stale, especially when users could contrast the consumer website every day. Employee engagement was down. I was losing trust with subject matter experts where they didn't want to use the platform anymore. And we had heaps of technical debt that we just could not move beyond. So we began asking important questions and what mattered and why does the internet matter? So at this time, we were talking about how to make this an organizational priority for a number of reasons. Why to make this a continuing investment. And in here, you'll see on the right a result of that investment. Intranets may functionally always be a priority for the content, function forward, but it's It's also a key employee engagement tool and resource center. Ensuring that the intranet is efficient and frictionless and user-friendly helps in a few ways to reduce things like burnout and stress for already a stressed population. And it encourages our staff to engage better in their community, be more aware of what's going on, and really, help self-support. So we've aligned it as an organizational priority to invest in these digital tools. It serves employees to ease burnout, improve retention, and also minimizes some level of risk. Sorry, technical. So here we have an aging platform, expensive and outdated software on a physical internal servers that are nearing their end of life. The end of support on those physical servers moved up our timeline, and we were left with about a 4-month window to launch a new intranet on a new platform, new content management system, with all the critical content migrated and intact. This would be challenging, but Luminis Health and Modea saw this as an opportunity to encourage holistic, sustainable design thinking about our entire system of web entities and the technology tools we're using to support that forward-thinking mentality. We identified some pathways toward rapid development that would help us to build an extensible ecosystem while cutting some clutter. We already had the brand, an open source CMS, and a development team and workflow cycle that we had become very comfortable with. So while we were facing this very strict deadline to develop, launch, and the largest pain point being a significant amount of content migration, from my seat, organization and communication became my priority as I engaged with different subject matter experts to set expectations and begin working towards that migration piece. From a project management perspective, we focused on overlapping lanes that included stages for design and approval, development and content audit, and migration. Our minimally viable product focused on the earliest possible availability of content migration. It wasn't the homepage to get everyone excited. It was literally, give me a content block so I can start pasting in content. All decisions and designs were made to align with the launch date and available hours. We had the understanding that we would build out additional features later, but the most intense part of the project was really about 9 months from start, and we launched right in the middle of that. Mo would be happy to talk to you more about our paths forward and solutions, but I've been really happy with our journey so far.
Thanks, Tanya. Yeah, so where did we land? Like Tanya mentioned, we obviously had been facing a lot of problems with the intranet throughout its life cycle, but where we ended up and the starting point for this whole journey was we had a very tight deadline. We needed to get things built and ready as quickly as we possibly can. And when you have a tight deadline, especially the 4-month timeline that we really needed to launch in, the best thing that you can do is cheat. And that's exactly what we did. To solve our problem, we ended up looking at what we already had, which was our consumer site that we had recently built back in 2022. And we wanted to just leverage that same architecture. We luckily had built it in a way that was fairly portable. It was built on the Drupal ecosystem, which Drupal on its own kind of gives you a lot of flexibility, but it wasn't just because it was Drupal, it's because we had a tight timeline and that kind of helped out. So using that same architecture really helped us sort of solve that just urgency problem that we needed. And then the second sort of step to that, as we expanded a little bit more, is we also had branded templates that we had recently worked on. Luminis Health at the time had gone through a rebrand, and we decided that there's no reason that we should just use the architecture. We can also use as much as we possibly can and cheat along the process and use some of the templates that we had and the components that we built there as well. And so where that landed us is starting to think more about just the two audiences that we were serving using the same architecture and the same templates, and that sort of opened our eyes to a potential solution where this isn't just something that is useful in a pinch, but it's actually something that you can do from the start, and it's actually not just a good idea; it's a great idea, as we kind of came to find out. And one thing that I want to sort of hone in on is that the two audiences that we ended up serving with this ecosystem, we learned that they're both fairly similar in terms of their needs. Both our patients and our employees need quick access to information. They're not coming in to scroll on a feed. They're coming in to get some sort of information, and so they need quick access to information. They need it to be intuitive, so they need to know how to use it, and they need it to be familiar. So it should be something that they're used to, and you're always, designing and implementing for your greatest common denominator. And so we want to make sure that both of them have the easiest access to information and no friction. And so that really helped us sort of start to hone in on this idea, not just as a quick fix, but really as a long-term sustainable solution. So that comes with a couple of benefits. One, it gives us a shared DNA. So we started to reframe the way we thought about both of these tools, really not as distant cousins within the same family, but as siblings. Siblings that share the same DNA. They're not twins, so they don't look exactly the same as you kind of saw in some of our screenshots, but like with siblings, they share the same DNA. So that means the same code, the same components, and the same architecture. They just do different things with those things. That is huge for our engineering team, and our development team in general, because it keeps everything on the same playing field. Everyone understands how things work. You can kind of move back and forth from one to the other. And we actually recently had sort of an example of the utility of this, where we had an engineer on our consumer site that was really focused primarily on just building that site out. And there was a feature that the IT department needed on the intranet that was going to be really useful for all employees, just showing downtime of all the services that Luminis Health managed. And this developer was able to switch completely over to the intranet and start building that component from scratch very quickly. Within 2 weeks, we had components. Within a month, we had a full-fledged feature. That wouldn't have been possible if they had to learn a brand new tech stack, and it wouldn't have been possible if we had just a siloed team on intranets. Typically, if you're running an intranet team, it's usually one guy and he has many jobs. So he's not going to have time and he's not going to have the patience for it. So shared DNA, key, very, very useful for us, especially when it came to the intranet. The second thing that this kind of enables is strategic recycling. So as with siblings, hand-me-downs are a great thing. We don't need to build things twice. You don't need to buy the same t-shirt twice. You can just kind of hand it right down. And so components became very transferable. If we had something that we built on the consumer site, and we just wanted to use that for our employees, we could just copy that down and give it right to the employees, and that improved their experience. An example of this is that if it's easy for the consumer site to say, hey, I want an animated image carousel that has that supports both desktop, tablet, and mobile, and is dynamic and changes colors and all this kind of stuff. It's easy to prioritize that there because that's kind of what your consumers or what your patients are expecting. It's hard to prioritize that or even think about it for your employees. It's data, they're going to see it. It doesn't matter if it looks pretty, but if we can just copy that component over, it makes it a whole lot easier for us to to include that, and they just kind of get it as a benefit to just having them on the same platform. The last thing, which should not be understated and is the main reason we went on this whole journey to begin with, is accelerated delivery. You no longer have to think about building an intranet. It's more like assembling an intranet using Lego pieces, and just kind of putting things together and making them fit. So all of those became really, really key for just our development team and our content team to sort of to have everything use the same stack and same architecture and same language. These are some of the benefits that we just started to see before we even really finished with the process. Some other benefits, these efficiencies end up actually making better products, not just for our intranet, but for our consumer site as well. So There are times that we've had over the past couple of years where there have been components or features that have been built on the intranet that we have tested with our employees or with our internal users. We've liked it. We've liked the way it worked, and we just ended up copying those over to the consumer side. This works for everything from components to, if we have any new features or any experimental features that we want to try out, we now have a new audience inside that can test those features. And we know once that works, we can copy it straight over to our consumer site, get the same exact benefits, and it just became another extra testing platform for us, which was great, and then just made for much better components there. Another thing, smooth integrations. So they're built on the same platform. So data integrations become super easy, and really any integrations with your existing systems. One thing that we benefited from is that our intranet, just being an intranet, we obviously don't want it available to everybody. And so from the start, we implemented Active Directory integrations for single sign-on. And that was just a requirement that was from the start. You had to have some sort of integration with single sign-on so that people don't have to remember multiple passwords, things like that. We all know the benefit of single sign-on. It's great. And our consumer site didn't really have that because obviously we don't have users, but we do have content editors. And instead of having them memorize completely different, passwords and things like that, we can just reuse the same thing that we know we needed on the intranet. We can reuse that and put it on the consumer site. And that integration was super straightforward. Our IT department was happy because they didn't have to do anything new. They knew exactly what to do to manage both systems. This also works for data. So if we're looking for a Find a Doc tool or even any other data source that we're really using, if we think it's going to be useful on the other platform, it's as easy as copying that over. So both platforms get to be better products by sharing the same ecosystem, which is great. Another thing, bonus features. So there are some things, kind of like I mentioned earlier, that are just you would never prioritize or even plan for or invest in for an intranet. But sometimes they just come for free because they're using the same platform. So an example of this is that our consumer site obviously needs a very strong, very powerful search, and we made a significant investment in having a search tool that has really good analytics and has a user interface that allows you to dynamically change search and modify search criteria live. We would have never done that for the internet. We don't need analytics the same way as we do on the consumer site, but it got that for free, which free is always best. So that was an example of something that just we wouldn't have had the even thought of having before, but we just get to have because they're on the same platform. The final thing, I know I don't need to talk too much about this, but it's bundled contracts. One contract is better than two. One bill is worse than none, but is definitely better than two bills to pay. So that ended up being a huge, huge benefit for us from both platforms there. And so to really expand it back to the organization, what are these strengths and how do they correlate to some numbers that we can see? So one, reduced admin burden. You don't have to worry about your intranet, right? It just becomes kind of a no-brainer to do any platform updates, any patches. Security is a huge thing. There's a lot of times in which you'll get to your intranet site and you'll look at it and it's a year behind on any patches, and that's not as big of a deal there. It is a huge deal. You should definitely focus on it, but it's something that's easy to forget about. And so by kind of having them on the same platform, you just have one thing to really worry about. It's just applying that patch. And once it works on one, it works on the other. Reduced admin burden, always great. Also for content editors as well. I know Tanya can vouch for this, but just having the same experience and knowing where things are is great. If you're working on the intranet, you know that it looks pretty similar to working on the consumer side. And so content is where you expect it to be, and you don't have to retrain editors or content editors to work on different platforms. Another thing, future-proofing. So, it makes the intranet as future-ready as it possibly can. We're always trying to do the next digital trend when it comes to the patient site, because that's just what our patients expect. That's what our consumers expect. But when you build it for one, you can just build it for the other and you can copy it over. And so our intranet gets to have a lot of those same features and a lot of those same benefits. And it stays as feature ready as possible instead of stale and old and kind of like the old screenshots that we saw earlier where sometimes, it looks like it's from 1999, even though we built it in 2010. It doesn't make sense, but you get to have a lot of those feature ready features. Another big thing is engagement and retention. We're very strong proponents of just having an intranet. I think everyone can agree that it's really a powerful tool for making sure that your employees know where things are in the organization, what's happening, who to contact, things like that. Making that frictionless and making that just more intuitive and easier to understand just improves your retention quite a bit. Employees expect the same user experience that your regular users do anyway. They are regular users once they clock out. And so there's no reason you shouldn't have, a great experience there. And finally, it just becomes an investment multiplier. You can now invest more comfortably in your consumer site because you know that those dollars are effectively doing double duty. There's no separate line item for the intranet, and you can kind of combine those budgets if you'd like, and really just supercharge both tools at the same time. So a lot of benefits, a lot of things that we were seeing from them. And so we wanted to sort of briefly talk about what made this a success for us and what you can kind of look out for as you're building this out. It's not as easy as just copy it and you're done. You really have to be a bit intentional about the way you do this. But some of the things that help this out are one, consistent resourcing. So we made sure we had a continuous delivery approach that just meant that the intranet wasn't a one and done product. It's fine, if we copied it over and we did it in that first few months and then we were done with it. But we became a lot more intentional about it just because it became such an easy thing for us to continue to focus on. And we didn't neglect it. We didn't just say, okay, it looks great, we're moving on, that's it. We continued to iterate on it, continue to develop on it. Consistent resourcing key for this whole process. Second is just the iterative development approach. We're not running. We want to walk. We want to make sure things are done correctly. And we still had deadlines to meet, and we had priorities that we wanted to make sure we got. And so we designed things in such a way where you not only just we don't have to have the whole thing all at once. You can kind of start building iteratively and make sure that all of the components that you were building were reusable and they were upgradable. And we had that in mind as we were kind of building any future iterations that we had on both tools. Tanya, do you want to talk a little bit about the audience and things like that?
Yeah, I think we really had to be very aware of our audiences as a marketing team, but also be able to communicate that out because I think there's a lot of show and tell happening with the two products. So really being able to communicate out to stakeholders and other individuals, what the proper channel is, what each site can do, and really understanding how to best get to those audiences and understand the tone shifts. With the intranet, there's kind of a hidden audience, and that would be our trained content editors. And so we have to think about the intranet both inside and out. So not just like the site user experience, but what's that experience for our content editors as well? Is it accessible and simple? And for a lot of reasons, we made the intranet a much simpler, more straightforward piece of content to edit from the image administrative side. And for this last point, and I know I alluded to it earlier, it's really important that all the right people have a seat at the table and a little bit of an understanding of what's going on. We're traditionally a very, high workload sort of industry, but it's important to slow down and talk about these conversations so that we're not duplicating efforts or overlapping other tools. So we interface with IT and data analysts, both internal developers as well as Modea. So we can all collaborate and come to the table and troubleshoot when needed, but also, plan for best outcomes and next steps and things like that. So these, I think, are all things that made it right in our environment that set us up for success and the ability to continue the working relationship and spirit of improvement that we've capitalized on.
Yeah, and kind of just a testament to all of this is that this isn't something that we built yesterday. We built this 3 years ago. We could have talked about it 3 years ago, but we are continuing to work on it. It's been 3 years now, and our intranet is thriving. I think monthly we get hundreds of thousands of users. I don't even know how many. I lost track, but our employees are finding all of the information that they need, and that is just a testament to this whole process that we kind of built. And we realized through our constraints that this is just the best path for us forward. Um, so with that, I want to kind of thank you for just being here and hearing us out on our journey. We think this is going to be probably the best path for anyone, especially if you have an opportunity to build something brand new, especially a brand new intranet. We think it's a great idea to kind of copy it over and just keeping some of those design principles in mind and some of those factors in mind as well.
Thank you, Mo and Tanya. So we've had a few questions come in from the audience, and we have a good chunk of time to take more questions. So feel free to use the Q&A box as you have more questions as we talk through these. So the first one, Mo, you touched on this briefly, but how do you maintain security for intranet data with a unified platform? What are some of the steps that you've helped implement at Luminis Health?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of different things that we can kind of talk about when it comes to security. Obviously, from the start, we knew that this was an internal audience, and so we wanted to make sure that everything was kind of locked down. And so having that single sign-on approach was definitely key to just keeping that information where it needed to be and not just available for anybody. But outside of that, just leveraging some of the security and also just accessibility needs that the consumer site had. We're able to use a lot of the features that we had built there and build them and use them within the intranet as well. I know we have to make sure we're protecting data at all times, and so the platform that we used for the consumer site was one that was HIPAA compliant, and so obviously, as a baseline, we get a lot of those benefits as well for just data privacy, data at rest, and data in transit. But we obviously, this is a very unique, very specific kind of audience that we needed to keep things more limited for. So I think from that perspective, we had a few other layers that we had to add on top of that for the internet. Yep.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Another question we got, and you just mentioned at the end, Mo, that this
Mhm.
project has been going on for years. It
Yeah.
continues to evolve, and these are products that you all continue to invest in, but we, in theory, have some good learnings from many years of work. So I'm curious if you both could share a bit more about how the consolidation of the internal and external platforms translated to long-term competitive advantage. So you mentioned cost savings and sort of team time savings, but what else have you been able to observe in terms of accelerating business objectives and mitigating future technology debt?
Yeah. I'll start briefly with this and then I'll let you kind of run with it, Tanya. I think a lot of the things that I mentioned in terms of just the cost savings are huge. The fact that you get to sort of double the value of your investment, I would say is a huge advantage to just having these on the same platform, and just keeping things as up to date as possible. And yeah, I know, Tanya, from your perspective, you've had a lot of benefits that you kind of saw there. So if you want to talk about that a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, so for us, it was also a switch from a closed source management system to an open one. So we were removing some software licensing that had become a significant amount of overhead for a piece of technology that was no longer being updated. So I think we had some initial kind of reallocation of those expenses, and I think in the long run, it a lot of the value comes in minimizing risk and being able to be very agile. So there's times when we need to adjust how we're allotting our development hours, for example. And we might have some months where there's a really critical consumer project and we have more flex in our development time. If that means pausing on intranet progress a little bit so that we can then shift resources towards, you know, relaunching our sign-in for a month, or, you know, we switched over to my chart last native scheduling. So I think when we there's a huge value in having those resources kind of on tap to flex as we need. And we don't have to often, but when we need to, it's priceless. So
Yeah, for sure. I think the fact that we were able to have people are the same resources kind of working, shifting to the other platform. I think that was a huge benefit, and it wasn't something that we planned for originally, especially with the engineer that recently built this brand new feature. It wasn't in their bingo cards to go in and build something on the internet. But we were able to kind of shift that over and just have a huge value add that went from idea to implementation within just a couple of months, as opposed to just kind of being something that everybody wants but nobody's going to get. So yeah.
Thanks both. Tanya, another question that just came in. Are any of your content editors cross-trained to work on both the intranet and website content? And how does that work from your
um,
perspective?
right now it's administrators. I think we might have one or two that are to update their respective content within another functional area. Um, so there's like a very small amount. Most of our training is focused on content editors for the intranet, which we have a different series of permissions around and scheduling, and a little bit more guardrails than we have on consumer in that way. Um, so it does look a little bit different. The on the consumer side, luminishealth.org, it's a case by case, very few outside of our department have that editing access.
Got it. Thank you. This is another sort of related question that came in. It's more about the operating model. And, you know, we hear all the time about functional silos, particularly between IT and marketing. So, what recommendations or best practices can you both share about the operating model to help achieve this unified governance structure that minimizes brand risks and security, which we already spoke about across both the employee and customer ecosystems?
I think when it comes to that, it really helps to have a champion in both arenas. Somebody that can speak to the importance of projects or help prioritize different initiatives. And, it has reached a kind of a homeostasis in terms of there's, IT tickets that come my way to resolve and vice versa when things get crossed that threaded. So I think it's really it, an ongoing process. So if you first you don't succeed, try again. Somebody joked recently that sometimes marketing has a better idea of IT's contact tree than some of the folks in IT. So we're always trying to connect the dots and figure out who's over what platforms, because these things change, people come in and out, and same for our department. So it is something we have to continue to nurture that relationship. And sometimes it's about making sure we vet the things we're choosing with different leaders. Cybersecurity is one, networking is one, and the software development team is another.
Great. Across these organizations and teams and functions, what are the main KPIs that are being tracked?
I can speak to that a little bit, but when it comes to intranet, most of what I'm really tracking is things like abandoned searches, bounces and exits. It's not usually like page views or too much in that because people use the intranet very, it's going to be based on your staffing numbers and you're going to know what the norm is. And it might move a little bit slowly, but we do know that folks are using it more regularly. They're spending more time off the homepage, but also it's that they're putting in search terms and getting what they need. So for me with intranet, it's really about knowing tr pattern, traffic patterns and what's the norm and what might not be, and addressing those issues, especially with search.
I want to kind of add to that too, from my
Hmm.
perspective, Tanya. Just in working with the team, I think a KPI that you don't really think about, especially for your internal users, is just how many questions and how many emails do you get about things, right? That's something that you can't really track on a dashboard, but if people don't know what they're doing or they have a lot of questions, then you're doing something wrong. And I think just kind of in the way that we built it. It's been a lot easier for employees to kind of find what they're looking for, and search is a great example. I mean, we get like a lot of search analytics just by default, just because of the benefits of using the same platform. But seeing fewer questions, I'm assuming is going to be a huge benefit to anybody that's working on this.
Thank you so much. I think that's a great place to conclude. I am going to, first of all, just thank Tanya and Mo for taking us through this journey today, and then pass it back to Farah to wrap us up.
Thank you.
Thanks. I want to thank Modea for sponsoring today's webinar and the great discussion. If you have any questions, you can, this recording will be distributed and you can see everyone's contact information there, or you can reach out to me as well and I can connect you to. And please remember, there is a short survey. We would really appreciate your feedback. That's how we get our information and how you like the webinars and what you would like to see presented in the future. So once again, thank you for joining us, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Thank you.